Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Friday, March 8th. It's a Friday, so that means it's time for some right-wing insanity report here on Status Coup. I'm Tina-Desiree Berg, your host for the show. This week, we're going to be looking at the State of the Union address that happened last night. I'm sure many of you have seen clips floating around on social media if you did not see the full speech. But we're going to be taking a look at some of the craziest moments or cringy moments, depending on how you want to see that, and some of the reactions from the right and the left on those. Here to have this discussion is my favorite disinformation reporter of all time, Brooke Binkowski. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you back on.
It's nice to be here. Sorry, I just got startled by my huge face all of a sudden.
It's a huge and beautiful face.
Oh, thank you. I love you so much.
Let's take a look at number one. He started the speech. Biden started the speech last night talking about foreign policy, talking about Russia, Ukraine. He brought up some quotes from FDR and then went to this Reagan quote about bringing the wall down with Gorbachev. I didn't think that was the best way to start State of the Union. There's a lot of bit going on that's far more problematic than anything to do with the Ukrainian war at this point. But that's how we chose to start it. I want to shift, though, to what I think is just the biggest problem here. And that is the conversation we're currently having in the country on immigration. So in my opinion, and we're going to play this clip in a second, in my opinion, Biden sounds like George W. Bush from years ago. And the fact that you had an entire chamber of scowling GOP members unwilling to accept what Biden was saying, even though it's a very far right position, kind of makes it really clear how far the Overton window has moved in this country to the right when it comes to immigration. So I want to talk about that. But before we get into the conversation, let's play a little bit of Biden discussing immigration, and we'll go from there.
Security reforms we've ever seen. Oh, you don't think so? You don't like that bill, huh? That conservatives got together and said it was a good bill? I'll be darned. That's amazing. That bipartisan bill would hire 1,500 more security agents and officers, 100 more immigration judges to help tackle the backload of 2 million cases, 4,300 more asylum officers, and new policies so they can resolve cases in 6 months instead of 6 years now.
Okay, so Brooke, you're in a border town. You live down in San Diego. You deal with the border. What are your thoughts right off the top on this?
Okay, so I was actually a border reporter for a very long time before I left border reporting to get into the counter disinformation game, which was a very, very bad idea, no matter how you slice it. I shouldn't have done any of that. I should have just stayed home and written my weird novels. Because it was a lot of effort for this. So what I can say is there has been a concerted effort for many, many, many years, probably 40 to 50 years, since the 1970s, to change the way Americans feel about immigration. And it's been horrifically successful. It was something that Americans regarded as a net good, as a net bonus for a very long time, until this guy, John Tanton, this retired ophthalmologist in Michigan, a white guy, of course, with his white wife, living in a white enclave, decided to get really worked up about the birth rate of people who weren't white. And he called that overpopulation, which is basically what anytime you hear somebody talking about overpopulation, they mean there's too many people who don't look like me. And because so many people are saying that, who are white, it's pretty obvious that it's eugenics. It's a eugenicist term. There's enough world to support the number of people that we have. There always has been. That is the biggest lie of all, that the world is overpopulated. It drives me crazy, actually. I used to call it the big lie, and then that got co-opted, because of January 6th. Just another thing I blame the far right for, because, they're like, oh, the election wasn't legitimate. That's the big lie. No, the big lie is eugenics. But okay. So there has been this concerted effort because of John Tanton and his wife and his exhaustive letter writing campaign that ended up netting him enormous sums of money, because he reached out to the correct eugenicist billionaires like Sarah Scaife, and the Mellon Carnegie family. And I think that was initially the rich people who funded this. Cordelia May, of course, Cordelia Scaife May. She was the one who initially made those, decisions to start funding John Tanton and his disinformation network, because what it turned into was a disinformation network. What
100%.
they did, yeah, it's disgusting, actually. And his whole contention was that the world was overpopulated, and it was overpopulated with, bad people, and those people had high birth rates and what did he call it? I believe it was broken cultures or corrupted cultures.
John Tanton, he had just to give people more background, I'm not sure everybody know. I know who he is because I reference him in my master's thesis, actually. But John Tanton, I would say he's the father of this sort of white replacement theory that you're talking about.
Well,
he at one point had a sperm bank, and people are going to think this is crazy, but this is true. He had a sperm bank for white Nobel laureates. You could get
that was Tanton? I did not realize that.
Yeah, he was connected to that. He lobbied to have the 14th Amendment overturned. I have some old FOIA documents. The reason I looked into him a couple years ago is because FAIR, which is one of the John Tanton organizations, Numbers USA is another one. A lot of their ex-employees were getting appointed into DHS and ICE positions under the Trump administration, which I thought was obviously a bad thing. But just so people understand more robustly who this individual is, he's no longer with us, but.
Which was cool because he croaked in 2019. And I was just like, oh my God. He died. And then I think it was 2020 when Metzger died. And I was like, finally, I outlived him. Finally. These are bad, bad, bad people. This isn't just a difference of opinion. This isn't just my political opinion, shining through, which I have no compunction about. I've got no problem with it. No compunction about letting my political affiliations, well, not affiliations, my opinions shine through, because I believe in human rights. I believe in equality and egalitarianism. I believe in all that shit that is currently very out of fashion. Believe in truth, believe in feeding children.
I know. Truth is sort of out of fashion, isn't it?
It's really disgusting and disturbing. Truth has become whatever. It's become
whatever your feelings want.
Yeah, it's what your feelings want, but it's also power dictates truth right now, and that was kind of the goal of all these disinformation purveyors, was to make power equal truth. The truth is what I say it is. And that has become the situation that I was trying to keep us out of. And, whatever, nobody wanted to listen. I mean, it's not true that nobody wanted to listen, but the people who had the power to stop this, the people in the higher echelons of, for example, media influence, the people in political power, I reached out to every single one of them. And a lot of the time, initially I got oh, wow, yeah, that's terrible. Somebody should do something about that. And when I was no, I mean, you should do something about it. They're like, oh, Brooke Binkowski's kind of a crank. She's a little bit of a maverick. It became like that. So this is where we're at. But so as a former border reporter, I left the border in 2015, or I didn't even leave the border, right? I just stopped doing as much border work, and then I sort of phased it out. And then in 2018, I got my passport flagged, so I couldn't cross anymore without being harassed. So I haven't actually crossed since 2018. So my understanding of Tijuana is 5 years out of date, 6 years out of date. Oh my God. It's awful, because I really, really, really loved border reporting, and to have it taken away has been very, I don't it's been a whole thing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. My feelings don't matter. But because of all that background, and because I knew about the Tanton network, and that was one of my goals, was educating my peers and people, my colleagues and so on about this network. It was a big thing for me, because I was you can't let yourself be played by these people. They set up these think tanks and these networks specifically to befuddle journalists so they can move the national discussion into a more pro.
They even had one that had progressive in the title. That was.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, it's so gross, isn't it? And then it's so confusing. They're it's why would you call yourselves progressive if you didn't? Oh, but what it was. So basically, Tanton believed that the Earth needed to be depopulated, and he believed in soft eugenics, which was preventing people from breeding. Essentially, that's his terms, by the way, not mine. He thought that preventing sterilization of
no, you're right.
Yeah, he thought that was it was okay to sterilize. It was okay to
he absolutely did, especially if you weren't white and wealthy. He 100%
yeah.
did.
Well, that was it. Not white, not wealthy, and that was he would have vapors, but he especially hated Latinos. he would have his freaking vapors, and his panties would get in a bunch, and he would write letters to the KKK all over again, and work on the messaging that way. Right. And so he wanted to bring liberals around specifically liberals, to the concept of eugenics, to accepting the fact that we needed to depopulate the country. And that was his thing. And so he was trying to think of ways to do it. He's like, oh, because he was so like concerned about the growing, oh my God, the environmentalism. Right. So he started,
he started making it the progressive argument, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was the environmental factors. He was trying to use that as a reason to sort of support his position.
Yeah, and he tried that. He donated to the Sierra Club. He donated to Planned Parenthood. He and his wife both did. Like, his wife took the lead on the feminine issues or whatever. But it wouldn't take, like, left-wing people, not liberals, but like left-wing people, anybody left of center was really uncomfortable with this. They were just like, yeah, okay, like, we're on board with the environmentalism, but we're not on board with saying, like, Mexicans caused this, you know, like that kind of stuff. So he decided to focus instead on immigration. And that was where he managed to play on people's fears of the other, by like making it as vague as possible and tying it to these fake statistics and so on. He managed to move the conversation to the right within 20 years. So 1994, 1996, 1994 and 96 were both banner years, 94 in particular, for really ugly nativist bills that they were trying to pass. I can't remember which one 94's was. I think that was California. And there was 86 as well. So it started with 86. And that was the result of a major pressure campaign. That was John Tanton's network. He and like his 10 little buddies made calls to the White House and lit the dashboard, oh my God, what's the word? You know, when
the phone thing. Yeah.
The phone thingy, the phone lights. The thing that we don't use anymore because,
exactly.
You know, that's like the old people thing. So they lit up the whatever the
switchboard. Switchboard.
I feel simultaneously old and young. That's weird. So they lit up the switchboard all night. They jammed the phone lines all night in 1986 and in 1994 and other times as well. But like those were the two like big things for immigration, and they ended up effectively legislating the country to the right. And that was where all that xenophobia and nativism came in. And that ended up also mainstreaming a whole lot of white supremacist sentiment, which I strongly believe, although I have no proof yet, I strongly believe that was instrumental in radicalizing, like Ruby Ridge, Waco, the Oklahoma City bombing. I think that those folks were radicalized by the national conversation about not just about immigrants, but also about immigrants. Like the first really ugly mass shooting in this country was in San Ysidro at the San Ysidro McDonald's, just across the border. The guy was targeting Latino people. He was targeting Mexicans in particular. So the first mass shooting was here in San Diego, and that was in 1984. And that was like looking back now, like everybody was like, oh my God, that was so terrible. And then, the first school shooting was before that, also in San Diego. That was San Carlos. I don't like Mondays. That was in 78.
So I remember that.
Yeah, God, I don't, and I'm glad I don't, but I think I was out of the country for that one. So they, the San Ysidro one, like that was a horrible, like that was a bloodbath. The San Ysidro mass shooting was terrible. And he literally said, I want to shoot Mexicans. And that got buried really, 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 really fast. Like I saw one mention of it, which is how I can say that, like, so with such certainty, because I saw it in interviews with his daughter later. And some of his neighbors were like, yeah, he was like a very creepy guy. Like he was, he was always talking about what he read on the right wing, like whatever it was at the time. I think they had like newsletters, like actual physical newsletters and things like that. So he was always talking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this was pre-internet, so yeah.
It's fully radicalized. And they got in fast on the internet too. Like Tom Metzger was online, and by 1986, he had a BBS in San Diego called White Aryan Resistance BBS. Like he was a very early adopter. And in San Diego, like one of our major things as a very online young person was keeping the Nazis the fuck out. Keeping the Nazis the heck out of our conversations. So all of that to say, there has been this like long concerted effort to keep the country moving, pushing to the right, especially where immigration is concerned. And that effort was literally created, conceptualized, and acted out by eugenicists. So when you hear people saying immigration is soft eugenics, or immigration laws are soft eugenics, that's what they mean, because that's what they're trying to do. Like that has been the stated goal of the people behind the efforts to move this country to the right. What is very depressing about this is that it's worked. And the Democratic governments have been the ones to really like pave the path for for much, much worse. So, for example, Obama, he was not Trump. He was way less bad than Trump. But I saw personally how many lives got destroyed because of Obama-era policies. And in fact, his nickname among border advocates and border activists at that point throughout his time as president was the deporter-in-chief, because
Right.
what we started calling the Border Patrol, like the thin green line and the green monster. Like, there were these names because the border agencies just kept getting more and more money and power. And then Trump got elected, or whatever, he got into power. And I heard this statement from, I think it was Brandon Judd, the Border Patrol union guy, but it was somebody affiliated with border agencies, and he said, "Now it feels like the handcuffs are off." And then I saw him, the Trump administration, like, bringing in all these Tanton people, and I was like, "Oh shit, we are in for it! Like, it's going to get real
Julie
bad."
Kirshner, she was the executive director,
Julie
I believe.
Kirshner.
That, yeah.
Yeah, Julie Kirshner, Stephen Miller. Oh, I have to
Right.
say, by
Stephen
the way,
Miller.
this drives me up the wall. This was always racist. It meant white power, and it meant that. Sorry, my nail polish is all smeared because I was like trying to do it in a hurry. It means white power, and that hand signal is.
Yeah.
It was mainstreamed in the 90s, and I know this because I was taught this myself by white supremacists with white Aryan resistance in San Diego in 1991 or 1992. And the reason I was talking to them was because I didn't know they were white supremacists, because I was 14 years old and they were trying to recruit me. And I never understood why they would try to recruit me. I thought I was special, and they told me I was one of the good ones. And I was like, well, I just must be really pretty or something. And then much later, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
So you think this is a concerted effort of just dark money coming in, sort of just pushing until we've gotten to the place we are now? Because I really do think that Biden's bill, which he had buy-in from originally from the GOP, let's be clear, some of those that have now decided not to vote for it were at the table discussing it and helping to mold it. The reason they're not doing it is because Trump said not to. He wants the win, I guess. But this bill is very much far right. And I think the other part of the conversation is that at the same time, you've had an increase in difficulty even being able to get into the country using legal mechanisms, right? That's been shut down as well. So when folks, try to make this conversation about, well, I don't have a problem with immigration, I just want them to come in legally, I don't know that they realize that those channels are really have been shut down, closed down a lot. It's very difficult now. So I just thought it was wild that his speech was that, and then you looked around the room and you saw all of these GP, and they were scowling, quite literally.
Yeah. Well, that's always been their game. They get their way, and then they start scowling and acting as though it's not enough. And then they start coming out and they're like, "This is ridiculous. Our border is swarming with immigrants." And they're using these words that evoke disgust.
Invasion.
Invasion.
I agree. The rhetoric has absolutely been ratcheted up to a point where it's just about fear mongering, I think. I want to play now. Let me play this. I want to play this clip with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene absolutely goaded Biden into making her argument for her. He fell right into that trap. Let's play the clip first, and then we'll discuss it.
It's not about him. It's not about me. I'd be a winner. Not really. Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border, people pay these smugglers $8,000 to get across the border because they know if they get by and let into the country, it's 6 to 8 years before they have a hearing. And it's worth taking the chance of the $8,000. But if it's only 6 weeks, the idea is it's highly unlikely that people will pay that money and come all that way, knowing that they'll be able to be kicked out quickly.
So he gets her name right. It's Lakin, not Lincoln. I was kind of taken aback by this, to be frank, and I was surprised how much of the liberals on Twitter were kind of defending this rhetoric. I think he got goaded into making a conversation that didn't make him look good.
Well, I can tell you that hearing Joe Biden say illegals in that context was probably one of the most, speaking as in my capacity as a former border reporter who really, really, really worked hard to try to make people see these folks, these families, as the desperate asylum seekers that they actually are, the economic refugees, the people who are fleeing unthinkable, unspeakable violence, the things that no American, despite like how crappy things are for a lot of Americans, like,
Yeah.
well, I shouldn't say no American, but there are few Americans who have to step over bodies to get to school every single day, which is what happens in Honduras and Haiti.
Right.
You know, there are few Americans who have to choose between selling their child and selling their own body to get food. Right? Like that kind of stuff is happening, and it's happening because of American practices. It's happening because of the pressure of the United States and the direct action and destabilization of countries by the United States. I mean, I was Latin American Studies. That was my grad student program, or my grad school program. I was Latin American Studies, Latin American history with focus on the U.S.-Mexico border. And yeah, that was a radicalizing few years, because I was like reading all these, primary sources, and I'm like, wait, what? Like the more you look, the worse it is. So speaking,
what we did in El Salvador is pretty awful. Yeah.
Oh, El Salvador, Guatemala. Oh my God! In the name of cheap bananas, completely destabilized. Honduras. Like I had a really tough time coming to terms with Hillary Clinton's when she was running for president in 2016. She said during one of the debates, she said, somebody asked her, what would you tell a Honduran child who's trying to come to the country? And she said, I would tell that child to stay home. And I'm like,
I remember that, yeah.
You voted to destabilize this country.
Right.
Like, how could you? Yeah, it was the hubris there. It was really, and when I say come to terms with, I mean like I had to keep myself from not like writing angry invective and, oh my God. See, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
So speaking as somebody who's seen that and lived that and dealt with people whose lives have been just like upended by this, like desperate families, like really, really good people who like the best among us, really, who are just trying to get some stability in their lives. They don't know where else to go. It's like the most polite thing, I would say, considering these are American policies that have destabilized these countries, it seems to me like only good manners to take in the people who are fleeing what we have wrought in other countries. But, whatever. As somebody who has seen all this and believes all this, to hear Biden say illegals, to use that word that we worked so diligently to get out of media, and by we, I mean we as in people who care about the border and care about the people at the border, like border reporters, border advocates, people who are trying to make immigration humane, to hear him say it and put it that way. I know it's being lauded as a rhetorical masterstroke or whatever, but it's not. It's adopting the language of the right wing.
I agree. I think he got goaded into that. The other part of it too, Brooke, is that I want to take a moment to dissect the idea that immigrants are responsible for crime in this country, because that's not the case. Most crime in this country is committed by citizens, not by immigrants. But here you have an example of holding up this one case, and it's a horrific case. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's horrible, but it's horrible because a crime was committed and an innocent person was harmed. That has nothing to do with the fact this person was an immigrant. This person was just a bad person. And we have plenty of our own bad people here in the United States that are citizens. So to make this example be the one excuse for not having reasonable immigration laws is just nuts to me.
Yeah, it is. But they've been doing that. They do that every single time. They find something that involves somebody who's here as an immigrant or who's undocumented. Like they go looking for it and then they blow it up. They take one little fragment of it and blow it up into this big national story. And, some people are bad people. It doesn't matter what their country of origin is. Some people, do horrible things. Some people are desperate and do horrible things. I'm not trying to excuse or justify any of that. But when you're taking one person out of millions and millions and millions, and you're saying this person is the reason that we need to change these laws.
Yeah, it's just nuts.
Yeah, that the fact that this rhetoric works makes me like angrier than anything else, because
it's fear driven, right? This is
fear and racism.
Yeah, 100%, which can often go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's like man, it must be so sad to be a white supremacist and just go around pissing your pants every time you see somebody who's a little bit more tan than you are. It's got to be so exhausting. I am so glad I don't live my life in fear.
Yeah. Speaking of, Colin, I'd like to put up a couple of these screenshots I have. I could be screenshotting this stuff all day, but here's just a couple examples of folks in right-wing groups on Telegram talking about not only immigration, but, Laken in particular. So this is the Southern Nationalism. This is obviously a nationalist group. Laken Riley was murdered by an open border. So now, mind you, we're not saying she was murdered by a criminal or a bad person that did something harmful, but by the actual open border, which is nuts. Let's do the next one. This is another example. No immigrants. Georgia participants blaming the death of Laken Riley on Joe Biden and his failed border policy. Again, they're using this as a way to gin up, beliefs that the border's the problem. This is why we have higher crime in the country, even though actually serious crime is actually down, interestingly enough. Let's go to the next one. This is a Proud Boys. So here we have the Proud Boys basically saying not only this individual, but look, here's other ones that have been a few more that have been apparently, murdered or harmed by immigrants. It's again the border's fault. So this is to me like he's playing right into this rhetoric with what he said.
Yeah. Completely, 100%. And then, it's just, oh my God, it's so disgusting because, you hear, then you see people defending it and they're like, well, it's just, he needs to speak the language of the right in order to
that's how the Overton window gets moved in a bad direction. Like if you start normalizing, specific terms, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And that's exactly how it works. And I've been trying, I've stopped trying actually, because it seems like this is what this country is into now. So, okay.
That's kind of where we are. We can always move the Overton window back over, hopefully.
Well, people have to want that first.
People have to want that. They don't know what they want, I guess, in post-truth America. So let's look at Katie Britt's response. We're going to get into a deeper Katie Britt conversation in a minute because that's my number 2, like, what the fuck moment thing.
That was number 2, all right.
I mean, just bizarre. But I want to specifically look at her response now or her discussion on immigration.
I never could have imagined what my story would entail. To think about what the American dream can do across just one generation, in just one lifetime. It's truly breathtaking. But right now, the American dream has turned into a nightmare for so many families. The true, unvarnished state of our union begins and ends with this. Our families are hurting. Our country can do better. And you don't have to look any further than the crisis at our southern border to see it. President Biden inherited the most secure border of all time. But minutes after taking office, he suspended all deportations, he halted construction of the border wall, and he announced a plan to give amnesty to millions. We know that President Biden didn't just create this border crisis. He invited it with 94 executive actions in his first 100 days.
Okay, so Katie Britt, for folks that don't know, let me explain a little bit about her. She's the senator from Alabama. She gave the response to the State of the Union last night from the GOP party. This is who they brought on. We'll get deeper into it in a minute, but I did want to highlight what she was saying here about what Biden's first days in office is as she's defending Trump. What are your thoughts, Brooke?
Well, first of all, it's completely untrue. I mean, if only all deportations were ceased, right? But
Right.
no, I mean, if you saw what was happening here, like it's so gross because it's so dehumanizing. It's just disturbing and disgusting. So there's the whole thing where like busloads of migrants are being dropped off on the streets here in San Diego. It's in like elsewhere, but in blue states and in blue cities, and they're just like it's so loathsome. It's like these.
It is loathsome. Yeah,
these
you're talking
people-
about Abbott and
Yeah.
DeSantis, I think, might have done the same thing at one
Mhm.
point. Yeah.
And they're just like busing people, and they're busing people or flying people to various points of the country far away from where their hearings are going to be, on purpose, right? And they're not giving them a chance to know where their hearings are. So they're going to get deported. And then they just drop them off on a street corner somewhere, like hundreds of people with nothing, with no paperwork, with no directions, with no money, no food.
I mean,
they just dump them.
The GOP can be like creating the circumstances ripe for crime. I mean, with
Well,
what
I mean,
they're
they're
doing.
trying, and then they're like, ha ha ha. They're like laughing about it, like
Yeah,
like
it's bad.
like it's the most hilarious thing.
They
to
don't
just,
see
like,
it. Yeah.
They-
It's
what?
like they don't see it. That's the problem.
Yeah,
They
you
think
don't
this
see
is
it, and they think it's
perfectly- yeah.
hilarious to do this. And then if cities like San Diego say, "Oh, we're kind of overwhelmed here," they're like, "Well, I thought you had enough. You're just trying to be like
Right.
enact your liberal pro-immigration agenda." It's like, well, no, actually, we don't have the resources to like help people, to like help them like get to where they need to go, to feed them, to give them water. Like we have resources, we have things in place for people, but you can't just drop them off on a street corner without warning anybody. And of course, they're doing that on purpose. Of course, they think it's funny because they're not humans. Like to these people, to these Republicans, the people they're dropping off in the streets aren't human. They're subhuman. They're migrants. They're illegals. That's what they're calling them. Illegals, not people, not humans, not people who are undocumented, but just that dehumanizing term. And
Well, it makes it easier to dehumanize them, right? I mean,
Yeah.
wildly too, I want to point out there was a time when the Republican Party wanted immigration because they needed the cheap labor, right? This was a business, and I think
Well-
Mitt Romney still represents that faction of the party, although it's quite small faction at this point. But
it's the thing is, they figured out this is what they want to do. This is the plan. This is literally what they want to do. If they can't strip rights from everybody who's not them, which is something that they're like probably going to succeed in doing, since the rest of the country seems to be asleep at the wheel, and we're more invested in like having conversations like, if you don't vote for Biden, enjoy the camps. Since we're having that discussion, that's a whole.
He's
other
not
thing.
very effective. Yeah, that's not how you win voters over.
Yeah, no,
but I
it's
got
not.
you.
It's pretty upsetting. And
Yeah.
so when you see like these, God, I forgot where I was going with it. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
So when you see like the Biden administration, like, where was I going with this?
I don't.
Damn,
I'm
Tina.
sorry. That's my,
No, it's okay. Where was I? Where was I? I was mid-
that was the plan. Something about this being
Thank
the
you.
ultimate.
Yeah, that's been the plan all along.
Okay.
Because here's what the benefit is. Now you have a whole class of people with undocumented folks, and you can just kick the can down the road and keep them in this status where they're in this gray area of legality. And by the way, it's not even
I see.
illegal to cross the border without paperwork. It's not illegal to be in the country without documentation. It is a civil violation. There are other factors that will
Right.
turn it into a misdemeanor or a felony, but as it is, it's not illegal. And to be in the country without paperwork does not make you an illegal. No human being is illegal. Nobody's existence is inherently illegal, and that's what they're trying to do. But these Republicans, what they are trying to do is create this gray area where people exist for years, for lifetimes. And they've done this very effectively. Lifetimes where they can be exploited completely. They have absolutely no legal standing. They have absolutely no ability to access, the networks of people who might help them. They have no ability to get welfare of any sort, no benefits of any sort. They have nothing. If they go to the police, they'll get deported back to a country.
Yeah, this idea that they're all collecting massive amounts of welfare and whatnot is just not true. But yeah, that does get pushed around quite a bit.
Yeah, well, but they can't. That's the thing. They can't, and most people who are undocumented won't even try because they realize that it would just bring down like the hammer of the GOP on them.
Yeah.
And that's really. It's so disgusting and disturbing that it's worked so well because now they get to have their little babysitters and they get to have their little laborers, the people building their homes and like the people mowing their lawns and shit like that. They can just exploit them. They can rape them. They can beat them. They can kill them. Who's going to hold them accountable? And that happens all the time. There's a mass grave out in Holtville here in Southern California. It's about a 2-hour drive from where I live. And it's a mass grave full of John Does and Jane Does. And those are the people who were killed crossing the border. Their bodies were found and they were put in this potter's grave with John Doe, because nobody cares enough to identify them and notify their families. There are now these groups, I mean, as of the last like 10, 15 years, like there's Colibri in Arizona. And there's a few others that will do like DNA analysis and notify their families, but like they don't have that many resources. And that's what we're dealing with here. If you die and you're undocumented, like nobody's going to come looking for you. Nobody's going to advocate for you, or few people will. Like there's people out there who will, because they're like me. They believe in like the inherent, importance. They actually believe in the inherent importance of all lives, except for Nazis. I don't think Nazi lives matter. And I'm sorry, I don't. They've chosen this. Fuck them. So, but everybody else is,
Yeah, I got you. Well, it bears mentioning that Katie helped. She had a seat at the table when they were creating this bill. And I'm assuming that the reason she decided to vote against it is because Trump said, vote against it.
Oh, yeah. They're all just bootlicking Trump. And can we talk about her delivery? Can we make fun of it, please? Because,
okay. Well, so that's our number 2. Speaking of Katie Britt, and she had just the entire response, Brooke, was like, just bizarre and also very breathy, for a lack of a better word. I don't know how else to describe it, but
I know amateurish and unprofessional, I think.
Right. So everybody that is like, what on earth, Tina, are you talking about? Let me just play an overview clip and then you'll understand what I'm saying.
President Biden's border policies are a disgrace. This crisis is despicable. And the truth is, it is almost entirely preventable. The American family needs to have a tough conversation, because the truth is, we're all worried about the future of our nation. The country we know and love seems to be slipping away, and it feels like the next generation will have fewer opportunities and less freedoms than we did. I worry my own children may not even get a shot at living their American dreams. There's no doubt we're at a crossroads. And it doesn't have to be this way. We all feel it. But here's the good news. We, the people, are still in the driver's seat. We get to decide whether our future will grow brighter or whether we'll settle for an America in decline. Well, I know which choice our children deserve. And I know the choice the Republican Party is fighting for.
We all feel it.
I was expecting her to say at the end, like, subscribe to my OnlyFans. I hope she's making money off this. Like, I really do. Because, I mean, if she's doing all that self-degradation for free, that's so sad.
Like, this was some of the craziest 30 minutes I've ever watched. I was like, is this an acting job? What's happening here?
This is so as somebody, like, speaking in my really bitchy and petty capacity as a former broadcast professional, that's what happens when you have somebody who failed out of acting class and didn't preview their copy. She did not preview that copy. Maybe she's a good enough, like, reader, but this is what you do when you don't know what to say.
She's trying to read the teleprompter or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was really bad. It was very, very bad.
It was so embarrassing.
It was so embarrassing. I want to play this clip. So this was really horrifying to me because, well, let me just play it and then I'll tell you why it's horrifying.
I traveled to the Del Rio sector of Texas. That's where I spoke to a woman who shared her story with me. She had been sex trafficked by the cartels starting at the age of 12. She told me not just that she was raped every day, but how many times a day she was raped. The cartels put her on a mattress in a shoebox of a room, and they sent men through that door over and over again for hours and hours on end. We wouldn't be okay with this happening in a third world country. This is the United States of America, and it is past time, in my opinion, that we start acting like it.
Okay, so let me say this right off the top. The reason I was so offended by this is, to me, this is somebody pretending to have feelings about something really horrible. I don't believe for a second that she's actually horrified or upset by any of this. Like, this to me is like somebody putting on a display or an effect of feeling, not truly feeling, if that makes sense. And then she goes on to like talk about you should vote for Donald Trump, who incidentally has just been convicted of sexual assault. So, adding a double whammy to it. But this to me was offensive. I don't see how anybody watches this video and is like not horrified.
Well, apparently from the reactions I've read, everybody was horrified. Like especially
even the GOP.
Especially the GOP, because they knew how bad it was. Really shameful shit. But also so my beat was actually human trafficking. That was my beat as a border reporter, because I was one of the very few women. There were other women who were doing this, but I was one of the very few. And a lot of the formerly trafficked people and currently trafficked people are women and girls. Not all of them, but the vast majority are women and girls. Yeah. And they wouldn't talk to men. Like, why would they? Would you? So they would talk to me, though. And so I would go to these places where these girls and women were recovering. I wasn't allowed into the boys and men one because, and I would ask them about their experiences and so on. And the thing they always would emphasize every time, no matter what, was they were always white Americans who were, coming in and taking advantage of this. Like, I talked to a woman she was trafficked to the United States, lived in like a hole in the ground in San Diego, with the guy who trafficked her, just this horrible life. He ended up killing somebody and framing her for it. This is actually a pretty famous, she ended up getting her U visa, like years and years later, but she was still in the process of trying to get it when I met her. And she basically had nothing. She'd been taken from her parents sold her because they were impoverished and alcoholic, and like they didn't care, like they didn't want her, so they're like, yeah, just take her. So some guy like takes her when she's 12, brings her to San Diego, and starts like selling her to people.
That's awful.
To white American businessmen. It's like, this is the stuff that's happening. This is the stuff that's going on in our name. I'm not saying that this is the only thing that goes on. I'm not saying that there are, like every person in every country other than the United States is totally innocent. But when we're in a situation of structural misogyny and structural racism, when you're in a country that borders another country that has less geopolitical sway and a weaker economy than you do, because the United States is a much stronger economy and much more geopolitical strength than Mexico does on multiple fronts. Right. That trickles down to interpersonal interactions. And what that means is that white American men can literally afford to think of little girls and little boys in Mexico or other countries like Thailand, for example, as less than, their lives don't matter. They can just abuse them. They can leave, they can just walk out and leave the little girl or little boy crying, right? So I heard stories that I would come home just like sobbing, because it was that bad. And for her to turn this into a political talking point is pretty gross. And it gives me great pleasure and delight to see how bad she biffed it.
It's really appalling. I just don't feel any sincerity. I mean, it's almost like
none whatsoever.
She's like kind of how a psychopath or a serial killer would talk about how they think you're supposed to have feelings about something. That's how it sort of plays to me.
I've had a lot of evangelicals try to convert me, which was one of those things where I didn't think about it for years. And then at some point I'm like, oh, it's my Jew face. It's my features. It's my ethnicity. It is. That's what it is. So they would they'd be like, you need to accept God into your heart. And they would have that same affect. And so that's actually what it reminds me of. And then I'd be like, no, I'm an atheist, man. That's not cool. And they'd be like, I can't believe you're going to go to hell. Like that.
That's so funny. Fake crying. All right. So I want to play this next clip. Of course, she had to take some pot shots at the CCP, the Communist Chinese Party. I mean, because
fucking Birchers.
The CCP continues to be this thing with the far right, which is bizarre to me because they have literally no political sway in the United States of America whatsoever. I don't know why this is worthy of taking pot shots at, but let's go ahead and play this.
Oh, well, that's not true. There's a bunch of little old ladies who go out to the park by my house and like do Tai Chi, and they're apparently affiliated with the CCP. They talk to lots of other little old ladies.
I don't know if I have that clip.
Yeah, the CCP knows the Andrew Perez.
Oh.
Do you see it?
For some reason, give me one.
All right. We love you, Colin.
We love you, Colin. I can just go off for another like 3 hours if you need me to. I can talk about racism and the GOP. I can talk about the Tanton Network. I can talk about immigration. I got lots. I can talk about disinformation campaigns, although like I can't really detail the current ones because it's just like we're in a full-on info war now. Like we are in a full-blown information
call this
war.
like post-truth America.
It sucks.
There it is. Yeah. Okay. There we go.
You see, the CCP knows that if it conquers the minds of our next generation, it conquers America.
Wow. Is this a hostage video? Blink twice if you need. If there's a gun.
But creates an account for his own campaign. Y'all, you can't make this stuff up.
Like, this is so bizarre. What is she talking about? The CCP has captured the minds of our entire Zoomer generation. Is she nuts?
Oh, she's talking about TikTok. That's what she's talking about. It's more fear mongering about TikTok and how. Like,
okay, now, thank you. You know what? I could not put that together, but you're probably right. That's probably exactly what it is. When I first saw this, I was like, "What is she talking about?"
It's my brainworms. My brainworms.
No, thank you for that. But you're probably, you're 100% probably correct. Yeah, it's TikTok.
Shit.
Okay, shit.
Yeah, there's that, and also the CCP communism thing.
All right, I got you. But like nobody using TikTok is doing it because they are like, yay, CCP. Like that's just not a thing.
Yeah, but that if the GOP manages to push through legislation to God, what was it?
The my free speech, or GOP, my free speech. People always want to ban everybody. Yeah, they want to ban TikTok because
it's all part of like capturing the full internet. So that like now, right. I mean, now we're in a position.
But it's just another example of the hypocrisy. It's like I thought you guys were the free speech warriors. Now you're not.
It's not even hypocrisy because they don't consider the rest of us to be human. Like they think that they deserve to say whatever the hell they want without repercussion and do whatever they want to the rest of us without repercussion. And that is where it's
the repercussions that's the problem, right? They think you having the same freedoms that they do is problematic. I got you. Yeah. All right. All right. So now let's turn to what the GOP reaction was now to her speech. So this is a Rolling Stone article that came out this morning. And honestly, this was just a great little article. They put it all together there. What the hell am I watching? Republicans torch their own State of the Union rebuttal. Let's go ahead and put this Rolling Stone clip up, Colin. Alabama Senator Katie Britt was panned after delivering the most bizarre State of the Union couldn't get that out, rebuttal in recent memory. I will have to agree with that assessment of her speech. The ritual surrounding the annual State of the Union is never complete until the president's opposition has presented its rebuttal, occasionally in an embarrassing manner. Katie Britt, a junior Republican senator from Alabama, delivered the GOP's rebuttal to President Joe Biden's address on Thursday. Her impassioned, breathless speech, that's one way to describe it, delivered at times in an ASMR-esque whisper from what appeared to be her kitchen, ended up feeling more like a rejected audition tape for a supporting role on Grey's Anatomy than the hard-hitting political sparring favored by Biden's Republican critics. Into the late hours of the night, Rolling Stone was inundated, sometimes completely unprompted, I love this, with messages from longtime GOP operatives, right-leaning pollsters, conservative Capitol Hill staff, MAGA lawyers, and even some senior members of Trump's own 2024 campaign, absolutely torching Britt's absurdly overdramatic rebuttal. Yes, folks, this is real. What the hell am I watching right now? A Trump advisor asked mid-Brit remarks. Creepy, one of the Republican pollsters noted. A lawyer working in the Trump orbit says the performance reminded them of a public access television, and a senior House congressional aide remarks that it was cringe-inducing to watch and likely destined to be turned into a lame Saturday Night Live skit this weekend. Yes, that will probably happen. I'll give Biden this. At least he gave a better speech than Katie Britt, one national Republican consultant said bluntly. It's pretty funny. Online, the reaction from conservative commentators was similar. I'm sure Katie Britt is a sweet mom in person, but this speech is not what we need. TPUSA founder Charlie Kirk wrote on Twitter, formerly X, or X, formerly Twitter, sorry. Joe Biden just declared war on the American right, and Katie Britt is talking like she's hosting a cooking show, whispering about how Democrats don't get it. Podcast host Allie Beth Stuckey pleaded never again to her fellow Republicans. I know you all are going for the relatable mom speaking in her kitchen from the heart, but it didn't work. Just a straight, strong speech will do in the future. Thanks. Anyway, enough of that. I just thought that was a fun little mashup of what was happening. So yeah, the reaction was bad all around. I want to put up now. So that was like the kind of normie GOP reaction. I want to put up some screenshots now from what I would say the far right. Let's get these up. So Jesse Kelly, DC. No, what I'd prefer out of the GOP response, not what I'd prefer out of the GOP response, but there's no question Katie Britt has mastered the ultimate weapon of dimes everywhere, the fake cry. That's a second pro right there. That's a seasoned pro right there. Can't read today. Then we've got Jack Poso. Jack Poso says, did Katie Britt even mention Trump once? I think, I'm not sure, actually. I thought he did bring him up briefly during the beginning, but I could be wrong. Okay, Andrew Torba. If people don't know who Andrew Torba is, let me explain. He is the founder of Gab. He is 100% all white nationalist. I would go so far as to call him a neo-Nazi, but he might take aim at that. He might say, no, I'm just a white separatist, white nationalist kind of guy. But having said that, he's very anti-Semitic. He says this, Katie Britt should have been tucking her kids into bed, not giving a melodramatic political speech. The GOP is desperately trying to pander to women voters with other women. Anyone who understands women knows this will never work. Women hate other women. Like, what women want and are attracted to is a strong, masculine, authoritative man. Is there a single one of these men in the GOP? Andrew Torba, you're such a fucking idiot.
He's such a dumb fuck. I mean, all of these dudes are. They're like, this is the shit. Oh, this is like.
They're like, let me mansplain to you what you want, little girl. It's like, no, Andrew Torba, I think you're just garbage and you don't understand women whatsoever. But having said that, he did not like Katie Britt either.
Yeah, I mean, my distaste for her and my dislike for her has nothing to do with the fact that she's a woman, except for the part where she's selling out all the rest of us.
Exactly. It has absolutely nothing to do with the fact she's a woman. Only a misogynist like Andrew Torba could pull that one out of his ass.
Yeah, women hate other women. No,
pardon all of that, like improperly awful language, but man, I really hate that guy.
And the women he knows, who I'm sure are real quality, hate other women. Yeah, that says a lot about him and the women he hangs around with. Like,
women hate it. Like, what is he even talking about? That's just that is a weak-minded dude that needs women to hate other women, right? So he can manipulate women or something like that. Yeah,
exactly.
It's so stupid.
If women talk to each other, then they're all going to share notes about you and what.
Exactly. All right, so. This is Steve Deese. I decided to go back and watch all of Katie Britt's Soto response. I cannot believe it is real. It's the worst and most cringe political performance. This coming from a guy that like has taken cringe performance to the next level. It's the worst and most cringe political performance I've ever seen that wasn't a fictional portrayal. It's parody come to life, albeit unintentional. I cannot believe it is real.
And just think, this was the best the GOP could do last night.
The best. Okay.
The best.
And then this is from George. I don't know who this guy was, but I thought this was good too. I never want to see Katie Britt anywhere near a mic ever again. Republicans got the opportunity to dunk on this horrible speech and capitalize on a disgruntled country, and the response made people sympathize with Biden. Could have had Josh Hawley, Tuberville, Vance, anyone could have done a much better job. Competence over pretty. Next time, please. And last but not, oh no, we got two more. Laura Loomer, who is just a lunatic too. Why is Katie Britt's voice like that? She really is trying to get an Oscar. It's just too weird to watch. Had to shut it off. Why does the GOP always give us their worst? Worst GOP Soto reply ever. And then Charlie Kirk from TPUSA. I'm sure Katie Britt is a sweet mom. Yeah, we already talked about that one.
Man.
Tom Arnold. Wait, one more, Kate. One more. Tom Arnold. Katie Britt is so bad she couldn't be in one of my movies.
Oh, that's a pretty good one. I was like, did Tom Arnold go right wing? Because that would be really disappointing if he did. Okay, but that's better.
All right. I'm sorry. I had to read some of those. It's pretty funny. So yeah, all around thumbs down on Katie Britt from every aspect of the political sphere.
Well, look at that. I do have something I agree with the GOP on.
Right. Right. All right. So our next one, this is number 3. The anti-vaxxers are pissed at that Biden took credit for the vaccine. Why are they pissed? Because that. Why? Why do you think that is? Well, because so did Trump, and he was pissed that Biden took credit. So let's put up these screenshots because these are pretty funny too. Tracy Benz, you got these columns?
Oh, Tracy Beans? Yes.
Beans,
okay.
Sorry.
She's a QAnon influencer. Just let's get that out there before we even talk about anything she says. She is best known for her role as a QAnon influencer. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, 100% QAnon. Call when you have these, get these up. If you can find them, I think I sent them to you.
I don't think I got those, actually.
It's number 5 on the list, anti-vaxxers. Screenshots.
Oh, the tweets, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, just the photos, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tracy Beans. Why do I keep wanting to call it? Because Mercedes-Benz, that's what my brain's doing. So QAnon influencer. The amount of anger I have over this can't be quantified in words. All right, so the Donald J. Trump says, the pandemic no longer controls our lives. The vaccines that saved us from COVID are now being used to help beat cancer, turning setback into comeback. You're welcome, Joe. 9-month approval time versus 12 years. That it would have taken you. So she's mad because Donald Trump is like, no, bitch, that was my win, not yours. I made it happen in 9 months, 9-month approval time. So now all of his followers are losing their mind, right? So that's why this is funny to me. All right, so the next one is from Dr. Naomi Wolf. I don't think we need to introduce her. Oh, dear.
God. Well, let them all eat each other for all I care. Naomi Wolf's the worst.
Naomi Wolf has never, ever, ever met a conspiracy theory that she just doesn't love to pieces.
God, it's so depressing with her because I read The Beauty Myth as a 20-something and it changed the way I looked at everything. I was like, whoa, the patriarchy.
I know, how did she change? Yeah, I got it.
Well, you know what? It didn't hold up, actually. Like, now that you go back and look, it's like, oh, yeah, this kind of sucks, actually. But it was very groundbreaking at the time, as you know.
Is the 90s, yeah. All right. So Mark Anthony Hoffman says, on this issue alone, Trump could lose this upcoming election, is a major point of contention of his base. So this guy's basically saying Trump could lose the election because he defended COVID vaccines. That's insane. The vaccines are causing more harm than good. They cause cancer, not beat it. Angela, what the fuck are you smoking? Vaccines do not cause cancer. That's insane.
I fully support every single one of these people never getting the vaccine for COVID. Absolutely 100%. I used to try. And now I'm like, you know what? Why don't you just go hug everybody you love? That's a really good idea. Do it every day. Hug everybody you love every single day. Right. When I say that to them, by the way, they get so mad. They get so upset. They're like, how dare you? I'm like, what? I'm telling you to hug everybody you love. Definitely don't get the vaccine. Never get the vaccine. Their response to that shows me that they probably did. Quietly, you know.
I think a lot of them did. A lot of these QAnon influencers aren't, stupid. They just want to grift off of this whole movement.
They're a little stupid.
All right. So Jicky Leak says, What he did by enabling the pharmaceutical companies to impose a bio-fascist tyranny on the world will never be forgotten. Now, wildly, I think pharmaceutical companies do need to be held into account. Obviously, they're taking taxpayer dollars to finance their research, and then they're getting the patents on it, which is insane to me. That does not seem right. They obviously price gouge consumers every chance they get. They're greedy. So there are arguments to be made about problems with pharmaceutical companies, but vaccine efficacy, I can't see this word. Vaccines working, let's go with that, is not one of them. Vaccines are safe and sound and secure and all of that. So this is just some crazy. All right, Alex Jones. Of course, Alex Jones jumped on the bandwagon. I love Trump, but this is bullshit. The so-called vaccine is a, wait for it, biological weapon. Good news is people are awake and not even 45 can sell it. Biological weapon, man.
Alex Jones should probably watch out. Otherwise, I'm going to have to be an expert witness in another trial against him. And you saw how the last one went.
You still can't pay off that. Anyway, so that I thought was a big moment. Going through that stuff. All right, so then the next
But you see how it's eugenics still? It's still eugenics all the way down. That's the true motivator. Because it's always like, oh, well, I have strong blood, so I didn't get the vaccine. Like, I'm a pure blood, kind of thing.
All right, so the next one is just, I'm going to have to be a little bit petty here. I know it's petty, but
by me, that's where I live. I love petty.
I know, you'll love this. Okay, can we put up Marjorie Taylor Greene's outfit last night?
Oh, yeah.
What is this? So Marjorie Taylor Greene decided to show up at State of the Union, not only with a MAGA hat on, the pin for Laken Riley, a t-shirt that says "Say Her Name" on it, and there was another pin, and I can't quite make out what it is, but there she is. Yeah.
Oh, that's rough. That's not her color. Boy, that is just, red is just not a good color for her. She should never wear that color again.
I don't know why you would wear this to the State of the Union. It's just bizarre.
She thinks it's a troll. It's like when
she thinks it's a troll. You're probably right.
Remember Chaya Rejik, or however you pronounce her name, lives of TikTok. She went to be interviewed by Taylor Greene, and she thought it would be like
Taylor
a funny
Lorenz.
troll. Taylor, did I say Taylor?
I got
Taylor
you.
Greene. Who the hell is Taylor Greene? Okay, Taylor
you
Lorenz.
and I are both like.
Taylor Greene. I wonder who that is. I'm gonna have to look this up afterwards. Taylor Lorenz, yes. And she showed up wearing a shirt with Taylor Lorenz's face on it, but it had been like sort of photoshopped to be, unflattering. And
it was super cringe. Yeah,
it was so cringe. It was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed for her. But you could tell that she put it on that morning. She got it printed out and she put it on. This morning she's like, I'm gonna own her with this, because that's the kind of thing that really upsets them. So
it doesn't upset everybody else, but it upsets them. You're right.
Yeah. So you're getting a line in on their psyche when they do stuff like this. Because if
100%.
somebody showed up to her place wearing like a Biden hat or something, she would have a meltdown.
100%. All right. So petty thing number 2, George Santos decided to show up at the State of the Union, even though he's no longer a congressperson.
Another attempted troll.
Even though he wasn't invited, but he's going to run for office again. He filed to run for office again. But what? He's got a Laken Riley pin on too. So this tells you that this is a massive talking point with the far right in Congress.
It's a massive talking point among people who misrepresent themselves in every way and lie about everything and are racist. So
what do you think about his what do they call that? Bejeweled, the collar.
Oh, the bejazzled? No.
Bedazzled. Yes, thank you.
No, I said bejazzled.
Yes.
Sorry, I meant bedazzled.
Bedazzled. That's what I was looking for. The bedazzler. Remember those ads? It looks like he bedazzled his collar.
Yeah, it's too bad that he's such a rank little nasty shit who's just angrily scrabbling for power. Because if he just let that go and stop lying about everything, he looks like he might be a little bit fun. But instead, he chooses to be just a complete turd. Yeah. And I'm
surprised he showed up. I mean, this is a guy who was expelled, was not invited.
He will do
to show up.
Anything to be in the spotlight.
For attention.
Anything.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree. Desperate, scrabbling. It's pathetic. He's like the guy in high school who would just do anything anybody told him to do and humiliate himself in any way. Just absolutely self degradation, just to be able to lick the boots of the popular kid. He is that guy.
He is that guy. All right. So now I want to turn to the economy. Biden last night seemed to signal that he sees the end of neoliberalism inside, which I thought was not something I expected to hear him talk about. He said trickle down didn't work, that it harmed his dad personally was part of his speech, that it was high time that corporations start paying their fair share. He talked about bringing up the corporate marginal rate to a little bit above 20%. You know, I listened to that and I'm like, that's a step in the right direction. Good. But when you think about historically what marginal rates were in the past in the country, we're so far gone at this point that it's no wonder we can't rebuild our roads and, you know, have good things like, right, Medicare for all, because there's just very little of our tax base left. You know, one of the things I pointed out on BlueSky last night was that under Eisenhower, the highest marginal rate was 92%. Under Ronald Reagan, his first years in office, it was 50% until he cut it. So what we have now is like crazy low, and it's why we are sort of financially suffering in so many ways. But he seemed to want to signal the end of that. I don't know if he means it, where we'll go from here, but it is the fact that he was addressing that or bringing it up, I thought was a good point. I want to turn to Vivek in his response to this, because this is entirely revisionist about the Trump presidency. Let's play this clip.
It was more unifying for the people of Ukraine than it was for the people in the United States. And so there's a lot to say that others have already said. But let me add something that maybe hasn't been said, but I think is important, which is that the speech he gave paints a caricature of Donald Trump and his policies that actually pretends like it's more like George Bush that he's running against.
Right.
And I want to say that when you think about the issues he prioritized the most, let's just see it for what it is. Donald Trump is not the Republican candidate who's calling for tax exemptions for private equity billionaires. He's not the Republican candidate who's calling for cutting Social Security or cutting Medicare or letting pharmaceutical companies off the hook when it comes to drug pricing caps. This is actually pretty ironic because within the Republican Party, starting in 2016, Donald Trump is actually the one who led a revolt within that same Republican Party, largely abandoning those same policies. So we can get into the policy debate on its own merits later. You'll have some Republicans on one side of these questions, some Republicans on another side of these questions. But what I thought was most interesting about tonight is that we got a lot of insight into what I think the Democratic machine's approach is going to be for the rest of this year, which is to paint Donald Trump's policies as George Bush's policies,
right?
Criticize Donald Trump for his persona, and pretend like Donald Trump doesn't actually agree with much of the country and even some of the Democrats in that room on issues relating to pharmaceutical drug pricing, Social Security, Medicare.
Well, a couple.
Okay, so he's sort of revising what actually happened under Donald Trump's terms, right? So the idea that he did all these populist things that helped the working class is just not true. He campaigned on doing those things, but that's not what actually happened. I want to quickly point out, because we're going to cut in a minute to John Farina is going live in New York City. Protesters are going to be taking the bridge. Jordan just texted me. So I want to say this really quickly before we cut to John Farina. Everybody stay tuned and watch the protest. But, you know, if you look at what Trump actually did, he said he didn't want to cut Medicaid, Social Security, and Medicare, but his 2020 budget actually called for cuts in all of those things. And he would have gone through with them. So this idea that he is the great savior of Social Security and the working class just isn't true. Brooke, what are your thoughts on that real quick?
So real quick.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry about this. But as soon as he started talking, I was like, I find him impossible to listen to. Like, the stuff that he says is so boring. It's just like really impossible. But yeah, I mean, there's this attempt to rewrite history and turn Trump into this man of the people who really had it, you know, was like looking out for the little guy. And I think that that's playing on the fact that, you know, COVID has taken a lot of memories, including like, you know, like everybody's. And they're sort of counting on this, it feels like. I mean, they would try it anyway, but like there has always been this attempt to cast Trump as the man of the people. The guy's got a gold toilet, like famously.
He's got a gold toilet, yeah. He's like, not a man of the people. Yeah. And before we go, I want to pick up the last one, number 5 is this, really quickly. Lead pipes was on the schedule last night. So this is the Attorney General, believe it or not. This is the Attorney General in Kansas, Chris Kobach. Let's put this tweet up real quick. Biden, part of Biden's speech last night was he wants to get rid of lead pipes. This is a good thing. Everybody should be behind this in the country. I don't care what your political preferences are. Lead is bad. Lead pipes are bad. They're poison. This is Chris Kobach. Biden wants to replace lead pipes. He failed to mention that the unfunded mandate sets an almost impossible timeline, will cost billions, infringe on the state rights of the states and their residents, all for benefits that may be entirely speculative. What are you talking about? None of that is speculative. Lead will kill you.
Oh my God. Imagine coming out proudly on the side of being pro-lead.
Lead pipe.
Pro-lead pipes.
Pro-lead. This is where we're at, GOP.
I would like to point out a thing about Chris Kobach, by the way, is we were talking about the Tanton Network in the beginning. He has been their lawyer, their little pet poodle lawyer.
Oh, I did not know that.
He has been for years. Crosscheck, remember Crosscheck for undocumented workers? That was him. He was with.
Okay, that explains a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, doesn't it just? So yeah, he is bringing it back to the Tanton Network entirely, coming out on the side of freaking lead pipe. So this is what these people are.
This is where they're at. So let's do our super chats real quick, and then we'll cut to John Farina live at the protest. I have to put my glasses on to read these. Fly, Trump, or fly. I know. I see better close up with them, but far away, my monitor's over there. Thank you for the super sticker, 99 cents. We appreciate you. You're always here supporting the show. Dave L, $10. Thank you. That's so generous. I had an intense feeling of doom watching the start of the Soto State of the Union address. The people in charge of the government are the same barking idiots of a Jerry Springer audience. Kayfabe and bullshit. We're screwed. You know, I felt that way too. One of the things I noticed was, do you remember when somebody heckled Obama way back when, and that was considered bad decorum and everybody lost their mind? That's like kind of like the entire thing last night was heckling. So.
Oh, it's so gross. But you know, all we need to do is like kick the shit out of the people who are abusing their power. Like that's all we need.
That's all we need.
Figuratively, literally, just any consequences for these terrible actions, and they'll stop. That's what we need. Anyway, I'm sorry. That's my
that's okay. No, I appreciate it. Happy International Working Women's Day. Woohoo! Thank you from Brooke and I. We appreciate that. Down with the theocratic fascism and neoconservative neoliberalism. Power to the women in the world. I'm going to add to that. Thank you, Nadia. We appreciate you. Thank you for the $10. All right. We are out of here. John Farina is live right now in New York City. Protesters are taking the bridge. I'm sure it's going to get rowdy there tonight. So stay tuned and watch the protest. Thank you for joining us this week on Right Wing Insanity Report. And Brooke, once again, thank you for coming on board, our favorite disinformation reporter with a border reporter past.
Yeah, I think I only said fuck once, right?
That's all right.
Okay, cool. Thank you.